hope that the audience is present with us, maybe find something they relate to or something that leaves them to inquire about, but also just like appreciating the physicality of the dancers.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I'm giving them some tough stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Welcome back to another Art Versations, a meditative conversation about the artistic process. My name is Bri, like the cheese. Checking in with you, dear listener. Thank you for clicking on the show and for taking an interest in this podcast. My aim is to provide emerging and established artists with the platform to speak about their projects and their creative processes. If you might fall under one or both of those categories, let's collaborate. I mean, what even is emerging and established anyways? I've been having this conversation with some artists in my community recently, and it got me thinking about how I'm constantly emerging, always in process, never really deciding on one way to create. And I think it's a wonderful thought that we are always in process. Speaking of, my guests today are currently in process for their upcoming Toronto Fringe Festival piece. I've got an exciting roundtable for you. Here is an hour with the cast and creator of Unfurl, premiering July 5th at the Alumnae Theatre. After you listen to the episode, go get your tickets at the link in the description. All right, let's find out what lies beneath.
Thank you all for being here. I'm so grateful to have a full cast and a creator in the room. Maybe we could start off by just going around and saying like who you are and your role in the show for audio and visual to be aligned, and a piece of art that's like been inspiring you, giving you some life in this like pretty dreary world right now. Is that cool?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm gonna pass it over to my left.
Okay. Hi, I'm allicarry. That's my full name. I'm a dancer in this project and in life, and a piece of art that I just saw was the Spider-Man movie, the new Spider-Man movie, Across the Spider-Man.
Yes, I think you're right. Yeah,
was so beautiful. They had just millions of animators on it. Like every single minute of it was like a different style of animation, and it was just really visually beautiful and stimulating. So that's mine.
I remember seeing the first one, and I was like, this is a game changer.
Yeah.
And it's also Spider-Man has been done before.
Yeah.
But it's a different way that they've created the world.
Yeah.
So it's cool that those sequels, it was
yeah, it was really good.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I'll check it out.
Yeah.
Thanks, Allie.
Yeah.
Alli's also been helping with marketing.
Oh yeah.
So props for that.
Yeah.
Yes.
My name's Marina Robinson. I am the choreographer and producer
Woo!
of the show.
The soul.
The soul. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. And a piece of art that's inspired me lately. I recently watched a show on Netflix called Live to Lead, and it was really good. It was essentially Prince Harry is running it. Inspired by Martin Luther King. And it was different interviews with modern day leaders like Greta Thunberg and a lot of different people, and I feel like it gave me some inspiration to help out, and also just some hope that there's good people in the world that are doing good things.
Some hope. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I feel like I need that too.
Yeah.
That's cool. I'll check it out.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Hi, my name is Mio. Music model, full name.
Yes.
I'm a dancer in this work. Piece of art. I think I don't have a specific one, but I'm into digital drawing right now. I'm debating if I want to get a new a drawing pad. I also tattoo, and I'm trying to do it more. So
tattoo.
yeah, that's very natural. Yeah.
Wow, thank you.
My name is REECE. I am a dancer in this piece, and something that has been inspiring me lately with our friends, my friends, we've been watching like old dance videos of like when we were small babies doing dance, and it's just been very like funny, embarrassing, like profound to watch, just sort of like growth in a way that you don't sort of connect back to in a way. But yeah, it's been really like funny and just like the lightheartedness of it all. It's been nice.
The inner child, like
Yes.
healing and like nurturing.
Yeah, I feel like I like ignore it and like shun it for like 10 years, and then I watch it and I'm like, okay, that's kind of cute, and then I'm like, I'll see you in 10 years. So.
I love that. Yay, thank you.
My name is Simon Mazziotti. Full name. I'm a dancer in Unfurl. Something that's been inspiring me recently has been, I feel like, not a specific like piece or work, but I've been surrounding myself with a lot of like people that are really excited to be like making things and dancing a lot recently, and that's been really inspiring. Like I feel like all the people I'm like connected to right now are really inspiring and really happy to be making things like often, and I find that really inspiring.
I feel like in this moment right now, I'm like filled with some inspiration from each of you, and I think there's something about like gathering together and like doing it as a team.
Yeah.
That is so process driving.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Are you working on other things outside of Unfurl?
Mostly just like training.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
Planning summer things, teaching in the summer, you know, the hustle and bustle.
The hustle and bustle, which we were talking about. And being very unhealthy, but I'm glad you're finding some like balance.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yay! I'm Bri. I'm acting as dramaturge for Unfurl, and I just want to take a moment to like thank you all for allowing me to be a dramaturge for the first time professionally. It's really exciting to like work with a piece from scratch and like see the evolution of it. I'm wondering, Marina, if you could speak about like why you started this concept, or like what felt like urgent about doing it at Fringe, and kind of just like the beginnings, the roots of Unfurl. Where did that start for you?
From what I can remember, I think one of my first images was with the UV lights.
Cool.
Yeah, that just felt like something I wanted to play with and explore. So I think that was one of the roots.
Yeah. Was it like the image that came up in your brain? Of like black and white, or sorry, black and white, but blackout lighting? I find that's often how I get inspired for making things, is like seeing images. Yeah. So that was one of them. Why did I do French? I think you pushed me a little bit.
I made you.
Yeah,
I kind of...
I was looking into it,
influenced you to do that.
I didn't know that at all.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, what did you push?
I was just like, you should just put your name in, or like put yourself in water, you see what happens. And like do a show. Because, you know.
I'm curious what I even wrote at that point as my starting. That would be interesting to look back at.
Right.
As my starting like idea. Probably something
How do
similar.
you apply for Fringe?
I think it was just online.
It's
just
like a lottery.
Yeah,
like,
it's a
So
lottery.
like, do you have to like write a description in?
I don't know, you did it.
Oh my gosh.
Or is it just a name and like discipline or something?
That's a really good question. Now that I think back,
Do you
I think there
remember?
might have, I don't remember.
I wonder if
actually.
it's because it's a lottery, like they don't, funny enough, they don't really care what you do.
Yeah. So maybe I
Which
didn't
is
even
so
need
different
one.
from granting.
Yeah. I think maybe
Which
I don't even need
is
one.
kind of nice, because I feel like sometimes it's really daunting to do like an application process and have a fully fleshed out like vision.
Yeah.
But it's nice to just throw your name in a hat and then kind of in a way be like forced into
now I
just
have to do it.
creating something,
Yeah, that's
but you're
kind of
not, which is like
yeah.
I feel like connects back to like some ways that I like to create dance instead of going in with like this fully developed sort of vision.
Totally.
So it's
You
kind
get
of
like
nice
freedom
in that way.
to change too. You're not
Yeah.
like completely stuck with that idea you originally came in with, you know? So that's kind of nice.
I think another thing that kind of inspired me, honestly, was like meeting these people and being like, I want to work with them.
Aww,
Like seeing them dance. Yeah.
Stop it.
I think more, so in a way, like working with them and their own individual styles and ways of dancing, I think was part of the initial route rather than the idea. And some of the ideas came after that, per se. So from there, I kind of expanded into my own experiences and the world and all these things that I took inspiration from. But I think some of the roots were these people in the room.
Even maybe before you started, like when you were in conversation with them all, like in that moment, did it like add different layers to your choreographic process to know what you wanted to do?
I think it inspired the sections or the maybe style of
The structure.
the structure. Like I knew I wanted a duet from Simon and REECE, and like watching Mio's like fierce like physicality, I knew I wanted something that works in the world of like hostility and some of the themes we're working with there. And then Alli's
Like, Allie's so anxious right now. So little about it.
Like, this is perfect.
Not at all.
We can monetize on that for sure.
You definitely, I can see like the different movement vocabularies that you sort of adapted to each of us, which I think fit our ways we like to move. Like we weren't super, me personally was not like ripped out of like what I like to do in our duet section specifically as well. So
Yeah, and I feel like the other solos too feel very much like them too.
Yeah.
Or like in a movement
That's
way.
nice.
yeah,
Like
it
does
seems
feel
like a familiar movement vocabulary, but
like
it's
I
still
don't
very,
think
like,
we
fresh.
could have done each other's parts. Like personality. Like I feel like it should be exactly who's doing them, you know?
Yeah,
That's what I feel like from the outside.
It does feel like there's like a care and sensitivity of like you've thought about like the way we move and like that is like ingrained into like each of those like individual parts.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
It's cool though, because also like we did. I mean, I don't know how you made it, but like most of the movement that I do in my solo is like from you. Like you generated that,
Right.
And then still it feels this way, which is like super cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that's pretty rare.
Yeah, that's the thing about this process that has been interesting is like I feel like so often lately I've been a part of so many things that are task based and like really like the choreo is coming from the dancers and being generated from the dancers and then manipulated by the choreographer, which is like I think a really efficient way to make choreo, and I think it's an interesting way to make choreo, but it's nice to be like come into a room and it's like you've made this whole solo, you have just choreographed it and I'm learning it and I'm like I feel like it's rare to be in like a process like that right now, so it's been nice.
Cool.
Yeah,
I know. I recognize that there's those different ways to do that, so it's nice to hear that you still feel like there's parts of you in it, because at the same time I don't want to just throw myself at you and then be like do it. And I also wanted to bring part of that in, which is why in the final section I wanted to like make sure you all have your own creation involved. So I hope that there is enough of that element to it as well where you feel like fulfilled in that way.
totally.
From what I've observed too, like there's a sense that even if you had something planned or like you knew what the structure was going to be before rehearsal starts, I've watched you like shift and adapt to what they all need. I think that's like a really interesting and fascinating way to create, because kind of like what Reese was saying earlier, like you don't have a set description and then expect that like by the end of the 3-hour rehearsal that it'll be perfectly that.
Right.
Because then you're like stuck in a box almost. Like, is that kind of what you meant?
Yeah, and I also feel like in our duet rehearsals, me and Simon, and in group rehearsals, you have like given us the sculpture, and you've let us also put in our feedback and shape it in ways, or you've let us sort of talk amongst ourselves to figure things out as well, not having like a specific set of like rules that we need to abide to. So it's been nice to have the comfort knowing that you will guide us where to go, and you know what the plan is for us to be doing, but you also are allowing us to sort of fill in the gaps with our own creation as well.
Cool.
It's such a wonderful way to work. Because it just becomes so much more of a collaboration.
Yeah.
I think. And I think as an audience member, because I'm kind of acting in that way when I come into rehearsals, like I'm drawn into the fact that like there's a collective energy involved. It's like being shown. It's being like absorbed into the process. And so I'm so excited for like audiences to see like where it goes. You know, at this point you'll have it finished, but by the day that we're recording, it's still in process.
Yeah.
Speaking of the UV light section, as that section starts to become more solidified, and like, of course you won't know what it actually looks like until you're at tech. But why specifically did you choose to have the lighting shift that section versus everything else, which is I think a lot more like open lighting, and we see everything visually? So
part of my inspiration for that was the kind of stripping away of some of the individuality that each character starts with, and by wearing all white clothes, and when the UV light's on, that's what's glowing, and the whites of your eyes are glowing and the whites of your teeth are glowing. In that way, there's those aspects that you all share, that all the dancers share, characters per se. So I kind of wanted to highlight that.
I didn't know that at all. That's cool.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So that was kind of one of the intentions, that it's showing a
universal theme.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And that's kind of the transition, part of the transition into the final piece. So it's all this, like, amalgamation of stripping away and the question of, like, what's beneath it. So finding more commonalities and things that we share.
If that's what we end up with, or like are starting to get to by the end of the piece, you mentioned at the beginning there's like a very much more like individualized, or and in the case for you too, a duet. Maybe we could just like talk about each of you in those beginning sections, like what your character goes through, what you've been feeling in terms of crafting that section before you end up getting to the end. Maybe?
Cool.
Should we start with ALLI? Because
sure. Yeah.
You start off with these.
Yeah. I guess my character is just, you know, a girl in the world of Toronto.
Just a girly.
Yeah, and I don't know, should I like explain like the audio in the beginning, or like?
Why not?
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So
we can cut it out if you don't like.
Okay. It starts with like some audio of like news clips and like about the TTC and about kind of just the violence that's been happening on the TTC, and a lot of like little sound bites about that. So that kind of sets the tone for my solo, which is just a lot of anxiety and a lot of panic about, you know, that being in that environment and safety and violence and all that stuff. So that's kind of like what my character is dealing with, just like the anxiety of that. And then so I kind of go through a little bit of a spiral in my solo, and then I kind of cool down, and then have like more of like a contemplative section of my solo where I'm kind of just feeling what is underneath that anxiety, which Marina has talked about being, or she's wanting it to be like grief, which is what is underneath that anxiety in that solo. And then I kind of explore that as a section.
Yeah, I guess that particular movement from anxiety to grief is based on like a personal experience. I had a friend who passed at a young age when we were like 15 from violence, and so that's it was like a random violent attack basically. So that was kind of one of the inspirations for like all this primary emotion. It's so intense, this anxiety, this fear, and even recognizing that in myself when this was very heightened in like December and a few months back, kind of remembering that some of that's under there, I think, some of that grief, but then also moments of like nostalgia, kind of looking back, nostalgia, maybe some sadness in there, kind of peeling back those layers.
It kind of, for me at least, like sets up a tone that there's many different ways that grief and violence and like societal corruption can affect us all. Some people like turn to a spiral and like literally have to like go down to come back up. And I think you presented like both scenarios, or at least a mixture of scenarios, where there is that anxiety, but then it also is met with some melancholy and some perhaps like longing for what once was. Maybe?
Yeah, totally.
I mean, what a way to begin a piece.
Yeah,
Like,
it's an intense start, but I think ALLI does a great job at capturing that feeling.
100%.
As an audience member, I think it's really gonna be cool to be in that and notice like what comes up for you as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then a new character is unlocked.
We should name the characters.
I mean,
We need like an alter ego.
Yeah.
Your drag name.
Love it.
So my character is angry. But yeah, like just as Ali was saying also, it's like what's underneath the anger, I think, is what we are working on in my section. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. It's I think, I mean, I personally live in a very artsy world, so it's not, I don't encounter that as much, but my partner, he is also in arts as well, but he also works for a corporate, like CIBC. So from what I hear from him, it's like that character, my character, is in CIBC. Like, it's so real from like a corporate world. So I think that's also another thing. Like, I'm quote-unquote playing a business person, I think. And then very hostile and angry, but maybe it comes from something very gentle, something very sensitive, something maybe grief as well, like something very fragile, I feel, which I get there. I think that's the only thing that for me it's a bit different from the other sections, that I start with anger and then within the solo I get to notice. I get to a point where I notice like, oh, what's going on, you know? So
that's this one I was kind of inspired by looking outwards into like politics, and again even in Toronto too, seeing the business people and the egos and like the very tunnel vision, but asking the question like what's under that, like you said, a tenderness, a sensitivity, maybe like a loneliness or a sadness there, and in your solo it's like almost like you take off the suit quite literally, and that's like a stripping away of that hostility into what's under.
We love stripping in this show.
What last
Yeah, we love this.
It's modest. It's modest.
Yeah, it's a wonderful introduction to two very different characters, I would say. A kind of like contrasting feelings as an audience member that I get. And I think the movement languages are also very almost contrasting, but there's also elements I think that you both play with, which is like the floor work and then like the gripping physicality, which is some of the wording we used in the description. Like it's since like anxiety and anger kind of have similar, in my opinion, like stresses like that show up in the body, like you both tap into like some really like tense movement and then it softens, which I think is really interesting, that even though you're dealing with different feelings, the like physical languages are quite similar in that sense. Yeah.
I'll mention too, our sound designer Luke Grunt does such an amazing job at like capturing those emotions.
Shout out to Luke.
Yeah, Luke's been
amazing.
so amazing throughout this whole process. As he's like on tour, casually.
Crazy.
And to even make like 45 minutes of music is like from scratch too, is really impressive. So
absolutely,
yeah. Shout out to Luke.
Shout out to Luke Grunt, for sure.
Yeah, I love the music that I dance with.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah, totally.
There's a wonderful like beat in your Neo's section, and then I think later on in the piece ALLI kind of picks it up, but maybe that's different since I've been here, or since I last was in rehearsal. But I think like the like dropping of the beat that Luke has played with throughout the entire 45 minutes is really cool. So we meet these two characters separately, and then we get to see two people and the relationship between two people. I'm wondering maybe if you could describe like where your partnership is at before you head into the duet. Like what's your like prior moment before you head on stage? If you've talked about it.
Do you wanna? I think what's interesting about our duet is that I feel like I think between both solos and the duet, I feel like we all are just showing like different shades or like sides of the same like emotions or like experiences. Like I just feel like we're all exploring like similar things in different like avenues or different like ways. Ours is very much about the same kind of hostility, anxiety, that kind of thing, but like within, it's not so outward. I feel like it's much more like intimate, and it's like within your interpersonal relationships.
Right.
I feel like ours kind of starts in a more neutral place, I would say. But I feel like it's what's underneath all of that that's like kind of bubbling the whole time is like as we come on, there's like not much right off the top that we're like starting from, but there's like a lot of things underneath, I feel like, that we can pick up from the characters that we meet before.
Cool. Yeah.
Like I feel like we're kind of picking up where they left off with that same kind of underlying thing.
That's really cool.
And then we can take it in our own direction. But I don't know how much you want to reveal about the like structure of our...
I think we should talk about it.
You want to talk about
it?
Okay.
What's underneath?
Because what's interesting is that, so our duet has 3 separate phrases, and throughout the duet we change the order of them. So we change, like every time we do it, it becomes a different structure, or like it becomes a different duet. And that is interesting because it'll change like the way I think the audience feels about it.
Yeah, I also feel that in that changing, like our duet deals with a lot of ideas about like miscommunication, hostility between us, but also care between us. And so with this sort of decision making in the moment, it kind of like disregards how you're feeling in a way as a performer, because you give the option into the other dancer to decide where we're gonna go.
Right.
And so at times I felt like, oh, like I hope we do this part next, and it's kind of like the rug's pulled out from underneath you, which keeps you really into the performance. But I feel like our communication in the piece, and then also us just as humans communicating, it is like a testament to like sensing and like oneness in a way. but being okay with the detachment from that as well.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been in a piece where I feel like I have so much control, but I also feel like I have no control at all. Like, I feel like I can control...
Cool.
Well, only some of it I get to control, and then we take turns, but it's interesting to be able to, like, I make the first decision between, like, in our structure, but I've never had that, like, agency in, like, a work before where I get to kind of determine the outcome of the duet or, like, whatever we're doing. But then I also have to, like, relinquish that and be like, all right, now it's your turn, and I just have to, like, follow your lead. So it's like, that's interesting. I've never really experienced that before. It does make you really, it forces a certain kind of, like, attention, whereas, like, I feel like if we were doing something that was structured completely, there are parts of you that get just, it becomes muscle memory, and you kind of just are allowed to, I mean, it's not always good, but it does happen. You're allowed to kind of go offline in your brain, but this is different, and you have to be really engaged, or else you're screwed. Like, you kind of have to be, very aware of what's going on in order to know what's coming next.
And
so that's interesting.
Yeah, also feel like thematically throughout each of the sections, like both of the solos and the duet, there is this loss of innocence, or like awareness of, as your awareness is growing, you sort of lose that innocence, and it's also trying to get back to those, like, sort of, not ignorance, but like willfulness to just sort of accept where you are in a way, without attaching, like, the anxiety, or what's underneath it is grief and sort of loss of innocence, or like being fragile and sort of breaking down those primary emotions. And in ours, I feel like we have primary emotions towards each other, and then, like, what is underneath that is sort of our loss of innocence that our characters may have had with each other, may have had with themselves, and breaking down those communications towards each other.
I feel like also, like, ego is a big thing in the piece, but also in our duet. Like, I feel like our duet is pretty ego-driven.
I got so much ego as well.
Yeah. Like, I feel like that's, but when we talk about this, like, stripping away, I feel like that's what I usually think about.
Yeah.
Because as we progress, it's like, what's that?
Stripping away the ego.
Yeah. Like,
totally.
I feel like as we progress through the piece, it becomes less, like, egocentric, and we kind of don't really, maybe we still are our characters, but I feel like we're less noticeable, I guess, as these characters. We're, like, more like just humans.
Cool.
Yeah.
You talked about it, but I'll say kind of the words that were some of the inspiration for your piece was the idea of, like, making assumptions and ideas about what the other person is going to do, is going to say, which I think happens in relationships all the time. We enter a room and we come in with the idea of this person based on the past, rather than how they are in this moment.
Right.
So I wanted to play with that, and that's kind of what you have to be present. If you make assumptions about where you think the other person's going to go, you may throw off a lift or whatever, right? And I think as well, that's something I wanted the audience to experience, is not having those assumptions about duet. And then the other thing is just something that's under that, which is more of, I guess, a positive, is the trust that's there between you two. And, like, the care that you have for each other, which I think is you just bring to the table as people. I didn't have to curate that at all, and I think that's, like, as much as there's that, like, struggle and miscommunication, there's, like, this gentleness and care, which is so beautiful to watch.
Yes.
So it adds a little, like, nice spin on all the, like, intense emotions we've been feeling, to see those moments of, like, care for each other too.
I think also what's interesting when you're talking about assumptions too, like, is, I don't know, is one of the, like, cues for, like, how you make the decision is, like, you, like, hold out your hand, and then, like, it's, like, how, can you explain that? Because I don't really know what exactly.
Yeah, like, I offer my hand, and based on, like, REECE's reaction to it will change like the trajectory of what the piece goes into, basically.
What's next section?
Yeah, which I think is so cool.
Yeah.
Because it's like rooted in like actual like body language, and you can probably feel the like risk in that also, and like you guys feel the risk in it because it is an actual choice in the moment.
Yeah.
Like it's not just like choreo, like you have to make a choice like physically with your body language in that moment. Like, and I think that makes it exciting to watch as well for an audience. Not that they specifically know that going in, but I think it does create like a sense of like excitement of like you can tell that you guys are trying to engage with each other and like figure something out through eye contact or figure something out through each other's like you're really there listening and seeing each other, and I think that's what's cool about it for me.
They can also come through, how many? 3 options?
There's 3 options.
They can come back 3 times.
Yeah.
And see different things.
Yeah, I think that's really exciting too.
Totally. You can come back and see a different version.
You should get your tickets. Yeah, I feel like the piece like has like a very like upward arc. Like there's a wonderful sense of like yes, there's hostility, yes, there's rage, yes, there's so much outward violence and outward feelings of like instability. And then what I think we've talked about, Marina, is like the collective awareness and the idea that as a group of people dealing with the same outward shit, that group of people can then come together at the end and have like less ego involved and more community and a sense that like there's hope, that there's like a way to get through it together, maybe. Does that seem right?
Yeah, no, that's totally it. Some of the, I guess, words or feelings for the end, there's like a freedom to it, I think. And I think that comes from stripping the ego a little bit. Freedom, and there's like a joy there. There's a connection, and there's like this understanding between the people on stage. And I kind of like how you mentioned that you don't really feel as much like the characters anymore, because that was kind of my intention with it. Yeah, it's like you're so strongly this character, and then you're kind of more yourselves.
And like I think also something that you should mention or we should talk about is like that the process of like what we're going through is kind of like a meditative thing, and that's like where the inspiration comes from, that, right?
Yeah,
like that
totally.
Like that day when you took us to the park and like we all sat there and like did that meditation where it was just really focused on like letting go of your thoughts and like letting go of your judgments and your ideas and whatever, that's like kind of the state in which like that's what we pass through to get to the other side of like through that piece is like losing all of those like inner thoughts that are like aren't helpful, or like judgments, or like stories about yourself or the world or whatever.
Totally. Yeah.
But that's kind of the machine that we go through, not machine.
Yeah, the transformation, I guess. Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
It does feel like we pass through like a portal or something.
Yeah.
Or like something happens. Like,
and that's kind of what it felt like when we did that meditation too. Or I don't know if you guys felt like that, but it did feel like when you do that meditation in real life, it's like you're a character of yourself, who you think you are, who you like identify as, and then you do a meditation like that, and then you feel like, oh, like I'm just a person, like I don't need to like be like clinging on to all these things all the time, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up too, like the idea of like those exercises we did, or like how the process itself is also kind of meditative. There's a couple people that you, Marina, have drawn in inspiration from or influence from in terms of like what kind of meditation or like the philosophical concepts that are explored throughout the themes. One of them being Jiddu Krishnamurti, who talks a lot about like inward peace, and like even though there's a lot of bullshit around us, like we have the power to like look inward to be I think the word used, oneness, like to be within the oneness of ourselves. Do you want to talk a little bit more about his practices? Or?
Yeah, I mean, just to expand on that thought, he also talks about how we have a responsibility as people to kind of, I guess, find or remember that place within us. And in that way, if we solve the violence within ourselves, whether that be gossip or negative self-talk, things like forms of violence, you could say, we recognize that within ourselves. From that place, we have the responsibility to then be in that, which will expand outward. And there's like an urgency for change he talks about. There's an urgency. It's within the mind, I think. All this violence and all these outward structures and society and all that, it really comes from the individual per se, because the society is the individual.
Right.
So we can influence that, but it has to come from ourselves. So that's one of the things he says. He also, which is why I'm glad we did this the meditation together in the park. One of the things he often says in his talks is don't listen to me. He's find out for yourself.
Right.
Because if you're just taking ideas and thoughts but not experiencing them or perceiving them on your own, then it's just another idea. You know?
I think for me too, it started settling more when we did it as a group. It was one thing to hear it from you about what we were the meditative place to go to, but it changed when we actually did it. Actually experiencing that for yourself really does change the way I perceived that idea in the piece too.
Yeah, I'm curious about your experiences with that, because we didn't really talk about it much, so I don't know if anyone has any more things they want to share.
I'm just trying to remember what I was thinking about.
Maybe nothing at all.
Yeah,
guess not.
or nothing. Yeah. Great.
I think some things that I was thinking of that I was writing about when we were reflecting were a sense of clarity just in how information was coming at me, and not necessarily adapting that or attaching that to how I am feeling physically in that moment, or attaching it to an emotion or attaching it to a perceived idea of how I think it should go or how I thought it was going to go, or how I should create something based off of this. So yeah, I felt a sense of clarity and just sort of being, like ALLI said, I'm we're just literally human bodies with consciousness, so you can kind of guide your own consciousness in that way with that perspective.
I also feel right after we did that, we went into our own little creation too, and that made it I feel I'm now realizing this is probably why, but I felt it kind of came easy to create that little phrase, and I just feel it kind of just happened, and I wasn't really judging my choices at all, which was nice. It didn't feel I was stressed or trying to be impressive or anything, which I guess is kind of just the goal always, but
it's hard to do
but
that.
It's hard, and I feel coming from
influences.
Coming from a meditation does help, I think, to jump into creation from that place of just already not associating yourself as good or bad with your choices or your ideas. It was nice.
Any other thoughts about what you discovered in that? Maya, did you want to say something?
I kind of second that. When I heard the question, what was going on? At the time of meditation, I'm thinking about it. I'm nothing. But I think I don't know if it's a universal thing, but I feel meditation works for me in on my subconscious per se. So it's it's not something that I'm thinking about while I'm doing the meditation, but it affects in not direct way, but it affects in I don't know the word for it, but it affects later on, or like it just comes out of nowhere.
Right.
You know, I think I feel the same way. Like when we were working on our quote-unquote solos, it was probably easier because we did the meditation. I mean, I did have like a little bit of conflict with what we were trying to make and what I wrote. But even still, then I just like kept going with it. I just didn't really care for it, you know. So maybe that's
right.
Yeah.
Cool.
That was the task, I guess, to kind of remove the judgment, even if it's there. Like, of course, it's going to be there, especially in process. When you're making something from a very abstract idea, then you're like judging the concepts that you even think about yourself, and like I don't know, like as I was meditating, because you invited me to be a part of it, which I was really grateful for. I remember like judging my own. I think we also talked about this, ALLI and I.
Yeah.
Like judging my own thoughts about letting go of my own thoughts. So it became this like a little bit of a conflict in my own brain about like what does a meditative state feel like for me, and if I don't let go and just allow it to feel present, then I'm not doing the exercise right. I guess. Yeah, which I think like happens a lot in creative processes as well, where the flow of creativity gets so interrupted by judgment or expectations that it's going to be crafted right then and there in that moment. Thank goodness we have so much more time to figure it out. Yeah. I'm also very curious about like what happens when you're all together and these individual solo moments that we've all created, like how those have now been intertwined with each other. And again, like just kind of layering on those like concepts of like we're all together and like we're all experiencing this hostility together. Is that sort of where you wanted the trajectory of the piece to go?
Like in the final section?
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to do the exercise where they then create their own phrase based off of kind of what came up for them, or from that state of less ego,
right,
per se. And then from there I wanted to take those individual phrases and intertwine them, which happened when they started teaching each other. So yeah, it kind of, I guess, is a metaphor for that collective awareness, because it came from that place where everyone was experiencing awareness in the park. So I guess those phrases or solos are a representation of that, and so they're mixing it with each other. I also kind of invite a sense of freedom,
right,
and joy, and connection, understanding, those kind of things we talked about earlier. Yeah, so it's a bit more like lightheartedness compared to the beginning, for sure.
100%, yeah. I think that's going to be a wonderful snack for the audience to digest. You know, what do you hope the audience gets from experiencing it with you? Any expectations on like what you want to present to them? Even though we're supposed to be letting go of expectations.
I don't know if it's like an expectation, but I just wanted to comment on the like trajectory of the piece too. Like I think it's really special to have a piece that ends on a more like positive note. That's something that doesn't happen very often, I think. Which isn't really like a good or a bad thing, I guess, but it's like a refreshing thing. Like it's nice in like contrasting with a lot of other contemporary dance that's very serious.
For sure.
Which is okay, but it's nice to have something that's like ends on a light note.
Yeah, I would also say that like the themes in the piece, like there's definitely going to be something that everybody can connect to. We've all experienced these like themes, these like varying stages of like ego, interrelationship communication, and then in the last section like a stripping away, and then also just like a very face value like representation of we're the human beings with the consciousness, and we can have joy and freedom and see each other in a way that doesn't sort of need any of the other conflict or ego. Like, it's very peaceful, I would say. So yeah, it's just sort of seeing bits of themselves in every aspect of the piece.
Yeah.
It's also interesting, like how, well, I'm curious to see how the audience will interpret it, just because it is kind of like a looser narrative, or like not really a narrative, I don't know. Like it's like a
mix of a narrative, but also
but
themes.
And even with how that structure works, it's almost like it is more literal, more narrative in the beginning, and then that kind of like melts away into something more abstract, which is like, it's kind of nice, and it's also kind of freeing to, like, in terms of dance, you know? It's like, it doesn't, like, it's nice to come back to a place at the end where we're just like dancing, and the music is like a little more groovy, and it's a little more like, you know, it's more rhythm based. It's like sometimes dance can become so like, this is the narrative, this is the thing, this is like this is the, you know, the labels of this, that, and then it's nice to kind of like, at the end we're kind of just dancing. It's kind of nice too.
Marina isn't like, okay, how would the character that you have been playing done this part? It's more so like, you have a character and then you strip away to yourself and you are just yourself now. Instead of like being careful about how your character is perceived, I guess, throughout the piece.
Yeah, and I'm curious about how that will be as an audience, to be like, if that's like sort of I don't know, like refreshing, or like just kind of like letting go of the stress of like whatever narrative they were trying to follow, and then all of a sudden it's just kind of like, I don't know, it's just a thing now that they can just watch and enjoy. I don't know, it'll be interesting to see what people say and how they interpret it. That's what I'm excited about.
A couple of things you mentioned. I hope that the audience is present with us, maybe find something they relate to, or something that leaves them to inquire about, but also just like appreciating the physicality of the dancers.
Hell yeah.
I'm giving them some tough stuff. So
I feel like we've talked a lot about like the what's it about? They're like doing breakdance.
It's like hard shit.
It is pretty physical.
So props to you all.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm throwing in some elements of some breakdancing that I've been training a little bit more in, which is challenging and hard, but also really exciting to watch, I think, and hopefully exciting to dance. So I hope the audience just appreciates that for what it is.
Did you want to add anything?
Well, I agree with everything that's said. But I think, like going off of what was already said, but I'm very curious also not to see, but I'm curious if audience members would like associate their specific memories or specific experience by watching this work, because it's like very not like, it's not like a linear narrative, or like it's not like once upon a time there was this. So I'm curious what type of memories, I guess, brings up while they're watching it, because I think it's pretty clear about, this person's like maybe sad, or like you know, like on the quote unquote surface level, it's very clear to see, I think. But I wonder if that's gonna like go deeper into it to be able to like connect with their own emotions or the experience. I'm curious about that.
There's so many ways to interpret it, perhaps, or you know, even though there's like specific characters, I think like we all as humans have felt every single emotion that these characters are giving. So it's like, even though one person's on one thing, it's like, well, we all know what that feels like. And I think it's wonderful that there's inquiries that might come up, and like I think you're presenting a gateway for folks to like think about it afterward, which always is a great experience to come to a show like that. So get your tickets. It's going to be online on the Fringe website. Show dates: July 5th is opening at 6:45. July 8th, 2:30, July 9th, 8:15, July 11th, 10:15, a little late night show.
Fill it up.
10:15 p.m.
Neil's like, I gotta put that on my calendar.
I won't be there.
We'll see how the gripping physicality feels at that time.
We'll be using grip.
And then July 12th, 6:30, July 14th, 4:15. Closing show July 16th at noon.
Woohoo.
And there may be a Q&A afterwards, so stick around for that.
I would love to just shout out our lighting designer, which is Hughes. So excited to see how the lighting brings to life the piece. I think it's going to be amazing. And then our stage manager, Sophie Murias, who's also been a great help so far and is going to be behind the scenes. And then just a couple of people that have kind of helped me in the process with creating and kind of exploring. John Sesnick, my bestie. Kylie Thompson's been a great help, and then Pritesh Mehta's also been awesome. So, yeah.
Such a wonderful team of people that you've brought together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me be a part of that as well.
Thank you.
Yay.
It's been so fun.
You've been our therapist, our mom, our visionary. It's been great.
Yeah, I mean, I'll also just shout out my dramaturge mentor, Deidre McDermott. She, along with the research that I did for this piece, she definitely has a voice in it as well. So thank you to her. Just in case folks want to also support the show, there's a GoFundMe that you can check out. Please donate, because indie theater is so hard to fundraise, but I think this show, as you've all heard, is really quite unique and will offer an experience, not just sitting back and like watching a movie. So go check out the link in the description to donate. And anything else that we want to just promote about the show?
Come
to that show.
Come to multiple shows.
Yes.
Yeah, to every show.
See the different duet versions.
See the different, so many versions.
Bring your friends,
Which
bring your
one will you
mom.
see?
Bring your mom.
Yeah.
Bring your guinea pig.
Bring
everyone.
Bring your guinea pig to the 10:15 show.
Yes.
We'll also be doing a relaxed performance. I'm not sure the exact date, but that will be posted for sure. And we're hoping to have the TBI chair, which is a great addition as well. So, yeah.
Yay, access needs. Thank you, Fringe, for providing great education for that. Yeah. Just to finish off, I would love to hear about where people can find each of you individually.
You can find me on Instagram. My name is Simon Mazziotti, and it's MAZZIOTTI.
Full name.
And Facebook and all of those things, YouTube, all the good stuff.
You can find me at the beach. No, my Instagram is REECE Caldwell. Yeah, also on all of the socials, feel free to message me, say hey, I will say hey back.
Okay, my name is Mia Sakamoto. Facebook, Instagram, that's all I got. And I'm pretty active on Instagram, Facebook. I would probably not respond, but message me on Instagram and I will respond.
There it is. Yeah. Amazing.
My Instagram is what I'm mostly on, I guess. It's Marina Elise, 2 A's. And then the Unfurl Instagram, check that out. Unfurl.2023. Yeah. Surprisingly, Unfurl 2023 was taken. Wow. So we had to add a dot in there.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, who is doing
some competition.
Honestly.
I'm on Instagram too. It's ALLI_carry. You can send me a message on there.
ALLI takes some mean photos too.
Oh yeah.
Like your photography.
Yeah, if you want to take photos, let me know.
Hell yeah.
Around.
Yeah.
We're also making a trailer for the piece, and that will be out. You can watch it after this.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Or maybe there'll be a link. Who
What an
knows?
experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Go donate to the GoFundMe. Get your tickets. Get multiple. Check out all the other Fringe shows as well, because there's so much going on during that time. Thanks for being here, y'all.
Thanks,
Bri.
It's so
Thank
fun
you,
to chat with
Bri.
you and hear more about like your process. I feel like we've uncovered some interesting questions to keep us going forward. So yeah, don't miss the show. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Art Versations podcast. Please help the podcast community continue to grow by clicking subscribe or follow on your podcast platform and leave a review. As well, follow the podcast on Instagram at ArtVersationsPod. You'll find photos of the guests you just heard, plus highlights and quotes from each episode. Let's keep the Art Versation going. Send in a DM with your thoughts about art and any questions you might have for guests. Special thank you goes out to Jen Marquez and Maxim Bartnowski for their contributions. And thank you, listener. Till next time.